Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this event today. I'm Faizan. I am a part of the ND2C team, and we've brought together this event to sort of talk about the recent publication that we put out last month, the Future Outlook of Design. And we have a couple of speakers today who were also part of that report, who helped really shape up that up and shape up the narratives. And we're really excited to dive sort of a little deeper into their thoughts and learn a little more about what they think where design is headed this year. So I'm going to start adding them on the screen in a second. Assalamu alaikum, Usman.
वालेकुम
क्या हाल है आपके?
बेहतरीन आपके क्या हाल है
Alhamdulillah, all good. Assalamu alaikum, Nahil. Assalamu alaikum, Sarina.
Hi,
Walaikum
walaikum
salam.
salam.
How are you guys?
Great.
Awesome. How are you?
Perfect. So as people start to join in and like in the our sort of attendees or participants start to join and watch this event, I would like to just do a quick recap of what ND2C is and why we're sort of doing this event. So ND2C before COVID has done 3 amazing conferences that sort of just not just changed the conversations around design and sort of try to promote what design actually is all about in this country, but also set a benchmark for what good design conferences actually look like and how to put together conferences and these sort of events that brings together people not just from design but also any sort of field that interacts closely with design to have a very holistic community event that happens. And then, so this was before COVID, and then COVID happened, and as you know, everything sort of shut down and went on hiatus, and we've been on pause since then also. But this publication that we put out last month was sort of our attempt to restart the conversation around design in this country. And ND2C is also trying to move beyond just being an annual conference towards being more of like an institution that is a regular part of these conversations throughout the years and help shape up the narrative around design in the country. I will also just quickly try to share a quick walkthrough of what that publication was in case anyone hasn't seen it yet. So the title is called The Next Chapter in Design. And what we basically did is that we talked to a bunch of people. It included design leaders from like Pakistani design leaders who've been working both locally and internationally, as well as practitioners in the industry who are doing some really impactful work. And we asked a simple question around what they think, where they think design is headed in 2026, and what are their thoughts around what are the elements that will define design, what are some of the shifts that will happen, what are some of the things that we need to be careful about. So we had Faraz Maqsood who pitched in, we had Shazan Malik, Usman Piaz, who's here with us right now, Serena also here with us. We had Ali Kapadia, Hassan Habib, Sabah Zaidi, Ali Murtaza, Maham Suhail, Arsalan Khatri, and the individuals that I talked about who are also doing impactful work. So Nahil is one of them. Other than her, we had Kanza Riaz, Khidra Munir, Khurram Siddiqui, Samin Nadeem, and Sarah Jamil. So we tried to have a very holistic look, not just talking to the CEOs and the C-level executives, but also people who are practicing design on an execution level and what they think, where they think design is headed in the coming months and the year. And if you want to take a closer look at this, you can go to the nd2c.com. You can also see that link in the ticker that's showing up on your screen right now. Now I would let's get into the more discussion part of this event and start to kick things off. But before we get into some of the questions and some of the things we'd like to talk about, it'd be great if all three of you can give like a quick recap of what forecast you had shared for this publication, so that everyone is up to speed in the attendees today. We can start off with Usman.
I thought it would be ladies first, but okay.
Okay.
But hello everyone, I hope everyone is doing fine, enjoying Islamabad और बाकी जगहों की ठंड. I think coming to my part of ND2C report and recently what we have been working on as well, I've been noticing like the chat GPT that's I said there as well that UI democratized a lot and it has been changing so fast, but we have not been taking in mind कि हमारा जो mental perception है जो पिछले 40-50 डेवलप हुआ है we know कि अच्छा UI path में हम work in UI path from one touch to another touch to one flow to another flow, but अभी एकदम से वो blank screen है, there's just one chat window where आप लिखें और you can do anything and everything, but I think there's a lot that needs to be done on a development of a human pattern जो over the time develop हुए हैं, and you can't just over the day give somebody this all the interfaces and give a chat prompt and say that's what you have from now onwards. So that's what I have been emphasizing in that report and otherwise in the work as well. Out of our maybe taste of doing fancy thing, maybe we sometimes forget the human element of it and how we can carry along the human minds and also our own different nuances of being human. शायद उसको थोड़ा हम ख्याल रख लें तो बेहतर products हम बना सकते हैं. I focus because more on the product side of the things, but yeah, that has been pretty much what I said.
Perfect. That was pretty much what you said. Perfect. Serena, would you like to share yours?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So basically, I touched a bit upon the texture of things. Essentially, my idea is that with things becoming slicker and AI obviously is a huge part of the conversation, and AI sort of taking over a lot of these brand design and advertising, essentially creative tasks and creative work. There is an innate sort of want in people to have something that they feel like they can hold. There's a want for something that's a little bit more textured, something that's a little bit more artisanal. And I feel like a lot of brands that are like very bespoke kind of brands are going to lean more towards wanting handcrafted or like very people-oriented things, people-oriented design, and a lot of designers are also going to sort of lean towards visuals that have more texture, more micro animations, more interactivity. So again, like because we're losing so much connection with people over time, and it's not just because of AI, it's also because of like social media and the way we have evolved, like the way tech and the internet spaces have evolved over time. There is more of a want to be in a physical space. And I think that like a lot of design is going to be focused around that. More texture in packaging, more texture on websites, just imagining more interaction with people in general. Yeah, I believe that's everything I mentioned.
Yeah, perfect. Minahil?
Yeah. So what I said for the report was that design for social impact is now more relevant than ever because of how many problems there are in the world and all the crises that are there in the world, and how designers can respond positively to create positive social impact. And within that domain, design for climate change and design for sustainability, regardless of whether you are an architect or a digital product designer or a service designer or a systems designer, I think that is something that is coming up as a topic, as a field. And I've noticed that a lot of younger designers who are students right now or who are fresh graduates are really working a lot towards that. And I feel like that's such a positive note also to see that work happening and to see that, okay, there are people who are cognizant of it and there are people who are trying in different ways to tackle this very, very big wicked problem, which is of climate change, especially for a country like Pakistan.
Yes, definitely. Perfect. Thank you for that quick recap. And that sort of also goes nicely into the first sort of point of discussion that we wanted to bring up, is that, so Usman had mentioned, how, interfaces are changing so rapidly. There's suddenly a shift between, from buttons and menus and everything to like a single prompt box. And then Serena also sort of touched upon how we need to bring back texture and that sort of feeling of handcraftedness. And Manahil also talked about, giving attention to what actually matters and what's urgent right now. So in that, do you feel, in terms of systems and interfaces and user experiences, do you think trying to make things more efficient and more sort of predictive sort of makes the interfaces lose the soul that counts with menus and buttons and all these things? And what is the right balance between trying to make it accessible so that not overwhelming everyone with 100 different buttons, versus trying to bring some texture into it? So what's the right balance, and how do you think it's either efficiency or more humanness, or is it like a balance of both? Can we have efficiency while maintaining that human connection or not? What are your thoughts on that? And please feel free to jump in, whoever wants to start off, and bounce off each other's ideas.
Okay, I'm gonna go first, I guess. I feel like efficiency does not need to compromise the sort of interactivity of design. I think that I feel like a lot of the time what people sort of struggle with is wanting to interact with an interface and have the choice of what is going to happen. And I think that when you have something that's too intuitive, like predicting a lot of what you're going to be doing, you lose that interaction with the human being itself, and you lose that aspect of choice. And I think that you can have something very slick, you can have very slick design systems and stuff like that without losing the option of choice, without having people not make a choice at all and just sort of automatically, say for example, Google Meet recently has, they used to do meeting recordings before as well, but it used to be just in the format of a recording. You would afterwards, you would just see a recording of everything that happened within a meeting. But now they've also plugged in Gemini Notes into it, and you can't opt out, right? So now it's you don't have a choice. And so that in itself is an example of how you end up losing the choice, and it becomes okay, I either use this or I don't use this at all, because you don't have the option of opting out of these things. And so I think that it is efficient, sure, but it's stealing the choice from the user itself. And that interaction between between Google essentially and its audience is being lost just by doing that. So I think that efficiency, absolutely, design systems, absolutely, but not compromising on choice is the answer, in my opinion.
But also, I think just to add on it, I think with all these prompts and predicting what's next, we are outsourcing thinking. अब हमारे options जो हैं वो they are not the one we actually want. They're do you want this or this? When you give a prompt to the ChatGPT, it says, do you want me to put it into a PDF, a nice looking GPT, or etc. So I think we're outsourcing our thinking, which essentially is the core element of us being human, is a creativity and imagination. So if that's not being channelized enough, so usko ho sakta hai zang lag, machines being reactive to the things, not being innovative enough.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. It's the lack of choice, right? If you don't have a choice in thinking at all, you would end up outsourcing the way that you think itself. And it's the more you do it, like you said, exactly. I do agree, but I don't, Usman, just to sort of talk about your question itself, I'm trying to understand if efficiency is something that we're speaking about in specific, or are we talking about design systems? Because I think those two are separate conversations.
I think so. I was in general talking about user interfaces in the sense that अगर हम efficient बनाते हैं किसी चीज को, does that lose the humanness of it? Because I was taking ChatGPT's example. It's one box and then that's it. There's not much, even design-wise, there's not much you can do. You can change the colors of that, but there's nothing else to work on. So that was the sort of thing. Yeah.
Can you change the colors? I wasn't even aware. I'm so sorry.
Good question. I think they do it on their end. Like some days it's like a different color. I don't even know what they're basing that on. But sometimes like a
Okay.
light purple, otherwise it's that white gray thing. So that's also just like something. Okay, it looks nicer today. Why is it a different color today? So
Today
yeah,
is a different day.
today is a different day.
Yeah.
Manal, do you have anything to add to this particular thing?
So I think when we talk about user interfaces in Pakistan, even without being efficient, sometimes they were very strange. Like if we talk about banking interfaces, for example. And I think somehow the opposite is happening, that somehow with time, even though we are trying to make things more efficient or use AI, some interfaces are getting better. And I feel like, as you said, that we don't need to, and as my fellow panelists said, that we don't need to minimize color or joy in order to do that. Like Bike is such a great example of it. Like, of course, there may be still issues, but just the Pakistani-ness of it and the images and the color and having many things, I feel like I like that because it's something very different from any app that you would see in any other country except maybe South Asia. So I kind of like how our interfaces are evolving and how they're sort of balancing. But at the same time, I agree that sometimes even the AI chatbots have become so annoying on interfaces. Like they're just there even when you don't need them or when they're not fully trained. So that is, I think, a separate issue in itself.
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. And on that also, so because it's been brought up like the fact, AI is just there because they want to show, okay, we are hyper personalized and we're making things accessible before you even need it. So on that, what do you guys think is the role of, because obviously accessibility and personalization has been big for a couple of years, but suddenly it's everywhere because everyone's trying to differentiate their product or branding or service as oh, we are personalized for you, this product is for you. So, what is the role and what should be the limits of AI being used to do that versus just letting the person do that? Like Serena mentioned, just give us the whether we want Gemini agent or not. Um, so, what is the, because I know Usman, you've also been working around accessibility in some of your projects. So, like, what is the role of AI in that, and what are some of the things to be wary of? कि यहाँ पे AI इस्तेमाल करना है, but यहाँ पे you need to be a little more careful about not being too intrusive or invasive things.
I think these are two different questions, accessibility part and then the prediction and personalization. But just to start from the previous conversation, when we say personalization, first we need to describe what we exactly mean by personalization. Is it just mean polarization, doubling up on the similar thoughts, or just does it mean providing you exactly or only with what you want? So वो उसकी definition पे भी depend करता है, and also personalization or making things minimal doesn't mean said earlier, or removing things. To me, minimalization is maybe managing the complexity better, not like कि सारी चीजें खत्म कर दें और room खाली हो. That's boring. We like joy, we like the different flavors to the life. So वो layers वो सारी वहाँ पे. I think it's more about managing even for the interfaces. When we say now that AI has given us, I think, sort of capability to things easier to find in terms of personalization. I don't have to go through all the options which I may or may not use. I don't have to go that 10 or 15 pages to find कि मुझे passport कैसे renew कराना है. For that, it's true, you can personalize with the help of AI for the specific things you need. But at the same, that does not mean that you limit it to a very four walls of things कि इसी के दरमियान में ही रहना है, and you cannot explore. So you can personalize, but at the same time you can leave the room for exploration. That's important. And accessibility part, we have automated accessibility audits, but even in that we have been noticing, we have been given a task. If I say from example, example from some institution के total जो audits हैं वो accessibility के we did develop we did reach to closer to that where we were able to automate it. There were 252 indexes जिस पे करना था, but when we matched on audit reports and then improvements, then we did the human tests. It was not, even though it's my product, that's something not I should be saying, but when human were using them, वो बहुत different, not बहुत different, but जो चीज़ें, let's say somebody with differently abled or specially abled, AI cannot get into the feeling hospital on a wheelchair and वहाँ पे आपको एक फॉर्म फिल करना है इंश्योरेंस लेने के लिए, तो वो आपका जो डिजाइन इज नॉट जस्ट व्हाट यू सी, इट्स आल्सो आपका माइंड किस टाइम पे है, किस फ्रेम ऑफ थॉट्स में है, एंड आल्सो हम बहुत ज्यादा व्हेन वी आर थिंकिंग, लाइक व्हेन वी आर मेकिंग दीस थिंग्स, वी आर थिंकिंग फ्रॉम आई थिंक मेमोरी और द कॉन्शियस मेमोरी. जब हम प्रोडक्ट यूज कर रहे हैं तब सबकॉन्शियसली वो कर रहे हैं, इधर से हमें शोर भी आ रहा है, लाइट कम है, किस चीज है, लेट्स से हॉस्पिटल के एग्जांपल में. So there are so many things that involve in the decision making. So taking care of the circumstances, not just the ideal scenario कि एक वहाँ पे बैठा है तो उसको अगर मैं लगा दूँ, अगर let's say he cannot use his hand, तो स्क्रीन लगा दूँ तो वो कर लेगा. वहाँ पे और बहुत सारी चीजें हैं उसके around. So we had to go back in some. Now we do 70% automated, 30% cases में still we go and talk to the humans and observe them. And again, when we say observe, it's not giving them a solution, asking them to react to it. That's also a problem I think there is with the user research. It's more reactive than again exploring what they need, making a solution, sitting in a best possible scenario and asking people to do it is not exactly research. It's not exactly taking their feedback, asking their life journey and then maybe coming to solution वाले angle में. So अभी जैसे we go and we observe how they're doing right now, वो phone कैसे use कर, payment के लिए वो कहाँ से pen निकालते हैं, या managing all these things, signature के case में when they cannot sign, thumbprints के case में. So I think it has to be balance in terms of even accessibility, and also accessibility being one common thing. If I can convey during my life, I think it would be accessibility is not saying a nice to have कि बहुत मैं इस पे तो बहुत मैं रो दूंगा शायद, नहीं, it's making things better, not as a important. When you make things accessible, that doesn't mean you're making things accessible for especially able people, even though like I think 1 billion, more than 1 billion people in the world have some sort of disability, and that does not count in a lot of like ADHD is common and a lot of other issues. So when we talk making products more human centric is important, then when we say human centered around the habits or the us being humans, then ideal state कि अच्छा ये इसको यूज करके दिखाएं, अभी आप ऐसे करेंगे तो वो बहुत डिफरेंट फ्रेम ऑफ माइंड है जिसमें आप यूज करेंगे देन you use in actual. So अभी हम उसको we find like के जहाँ पे हम we still do manual testing, we still match the results, वो नहीं हो सकता. And then the other part of like again personalization वाला part है, उसमें you have to have a balance where it's not you're not suffocating people at the name of personalization. You're still leaving the exploration, you're still leaving the room for experiment. Your risk mitigation इस हद तक ना खत्म कर दें कि लोग risk ही ना लें, वो again robots बन जाएं कि. So that I think there's a lot that can be discussed in details, but
yeah. No, that is super important, especially the part about जो आपने कहा कि वो designing for specific people for accessibility, differently able, specially able, does not mean कि वो सिर्फ उन्हीं के लिए काम आएगी. If you design well for them, that means everyone on that spectrum उससे पहले that thing will just work better for them also. So this is a very common mindset कि अगर हम किसी specific audience के लिए बना रहे हैं तो sort of like edge cases कहते हैं industry में, तो वो सिर्फ उन्हीं के लिए होगा, कोई और नहीं यूज करेगा. But that's not true. We've seen in our practices, all of us, कि वो
very basic
you design
example,
something well for accessibility.
Yeah, sorry to cut you, but like very basic example, अगर आपके कंट्रास्ट रेशो ठीक है तो आम इंसान को भी नजर आएगा. अगर एलिजिबल ज्यादा है तो आम इंसान भी बेहतर डाटा इंफॉर्मेशन फिगर आउट कर सकता है. वो एज केस नहीं है. दैट्स योर गो टू strategy to build a product. So there is a study, I forgot the data, when you make product accessible, your normal user also use case with session time और वो सारे बढ़ जाते हैं, because that just mean that your product is no better usable. So you said it well, that's like core part of you building a product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of like subtitles, you know, how subtitles are not just helpful for non-hearing people, it's also helpful for just, you know, people with autism or some kind of, you know, I'm forgetting the word, but it's about not being able to process the sounds and the different sort of words very clearly. I think it's helpful for everybody. I am curious to kind of know if I could ask a question over here, Faizan. Like, obviously, I'm going to defer to you. But if I could just ask a question, what is, Usman, your product? What is it about? If you could enlighten us.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to sell my product. That, but it's called Muin. It's for G region specifically. They do this reports. वो करते हैं और अभी उनको 3 से 4 महीने लगते थे मैनुअली उसको करने में. That's according to CAG, ISO, some of the ISO standards, United Nations SDG goals. उसको सारे को करके वो डिजिटल इंडेक्स रिपोर्ट एनुअली एक आती बट उसको मगर वो सारा मैनुअल वर्क था. नाउ वी हैव डेवलप्ड आवर ओन प्रोप्राइटरी एआई मॉडल जो सारे ये कैप्शंस के केसेस में या जो इमेजेस पे ऑल टेक्स्ट होता है. A lot of time even there are others in the market, let me just कि वो बुरे हैं और मेरा अच्छा है कि वो alt text जो ऐड करते हैं वो even if you add any random text in an image caption तो वो usually जो testing है उसमें वो पास आ जाता है कि there is a caption. So now we even do the image processing कि वो image क्या है, वो है या नहीं है. Then on those more than I think 800 points we generate a detailed report along with the executive dashboard, focusing a lot on levels कि how they see accessibility beyond because अभी भी बहुत सारे जो tools हैं वो design और development focused हैं. I say कि इसका contrast ratio ठीक है, but how it in terms of the business, why do you spend on it? So then we map those gaps in terms of the business. If you miss on this thing exactly, तो इसका ये business impact होगा, आपका government का ये compliance कम होगा, इसके against globally ये lawsuits आए हैं और इनके इतना so for them to make sense to invest on it again that it's not something you're doing as a favor, you're doing for your own business. And like people say, oh, we have made accessible, that's a favor we have done to the society. No, you've done your favor own self. So we do that. It's an automated accessibility testing, but again, it's not fully automated. But right now we're working more with the Saudi government. For that one, Saudi now with Qatar government as well, but it's focused as of now. We're focusing more with the governments because we believe this region 90, can you believe now more than 90% of the public platforms don't comply with basic criteria of WCAG.
I see.
More than 90%. So we are working with government. We have been recently Royal Court issued the order as well, which means for all the public and private consumer facing platforms to comply with the 1 WCAG by mid 26. So these are a few areas that we're working on. Would love to chat about it later, but I think let's not hijack the whole session.
No, absolutely. Also to your point about like how certain things can be made efficient by automation and like kind of going back and touching upon AI in that specific sense, there is one of my clients that Front Matter is currently working with. We are working with a health translation service that uses like AI to do very specific translation of medical terminology and stuff like that within the doctor's office, which is again also helping out like very specific situations, a very niche. The patient actually is not
Sorry,
this
did we lose?
this
Okay.
specific tool
Yeah.
to have a translation of not just their documents, but live translation of everything that the doctor or the nurse, anybody else in the room is saying. And again, like that, I believe is like a very different use case of AI rather than like image generation or something like that. And it's supportive towards like people essentially coming back to like Manahil's point about like socially conscious design. I think like that would be one of the examples of that, and a very different outlook towards it rather than like, okay, how can we generate like really ads really quickly using AI?
Yeah, that's all super interesting to hear. And also, I think how it's like, so AI just tells you that it can do everything, but it's on us to know we don't want AI to do everything. There are something that should be very human centered, and we should be using our own thinking, because AI will very confidently tell you answers that just do not make sense, especially for like our context, Pakistan's context, which is global South context. So uske andar, I think the new designers coming in, especially Manahil, you'd be the right person to sort of ask this question around how do we sort of make sure that the new sort of students who are graduating and then coming into the field, or just like junior designers who don't have too much experience, are sort of aware of these things and don't rely entirely on AI, because there are two things happening. One is the entire reliance on AI. The other thing that's probably two different questions, so you can take one by one, is that the sort of grunt work that we choti moti tasks, people are very heavily relying on AI to do that. और जो काम हम junior designers को या छोटे freelancers को देते थे, that is very being heavily impacted. So again, sorry, I think these are two very different questions. But the first one you can start. Okay. How do we sort of cater to how do we educate people coming into the field about how to set your limits for yourself around what to use AI for and when do you use your own intuition?
I think that's a very relevant question. Thank you for bringing this up, Faizan. And I think the responsibility lies on all of us. So, of course, as an instructor, as a teacher, it lies on me, for anybody who's studying design or is interested in design in any form, to be informed of the limitations of AI, especially as you said, for our context. And as also Osman was saying that, if somebody in the MENA region or in Pakistan, how would they be in a hospital and how would they be filling a form is very different from how they would do it in North America or in Europe. So, and AI, of course, is more trained with those models, and it has a lot more access to data from there than from other regions of the world. So it's absolutely important for young designers to know this very big limitation. Also, the general inherent bias in AI against, certain religions, certain people of certain color, or certain regions. So again, that's something that designers should be aware of. But I think so many designers don't go to design school. And then it's important for all of us who are practitioners and who may mentor younger designers in some capacity or the other. So I think that becomes our responsibility to be teaching this. Otherwise we're doing a disservice to the industry and to the people who are going to be using those designs that we are producing, right? So yeah, I think. And what was your second question? I'm forgetting.
The second one was around I just forgot. Wait, it was around AI is taking up a lot of the grunt work. So where does that leave junior designers or small freelancers? What do we do? How do we make sure that they're not left behind? And this is obviously open to Serena and Swan also, because you work with designers quite frequently. So you would also know, okay, what are their struggles and what are some ways that we as an industry could help them, or just what are just some guidelines going into this uncertain, unpredictable future?
I think, again, that's a very interesting topic to think about. And I think it's just about changing their perspective. So, of course, in some ways, that grunt work has disappeared. that used to get certain people certain skills of practice, but at the same time it also, used to help the people who are hiring them get something. So now I think it's about changing that perspective, that of course they still need to practice, even if that is something that they're not earning from. Of course, they can automate some things through AI, but practice always helps in defining the human touch, as both Usman and Sarina were talking about earlier. And the second aspect is to sort of, I feel like there's so much more designers can look into, because I look at design very broadly, and there's so much more in design that still AI cannot do, even the grunt work and AI cannot do. So I feel like they should explore the field further and see that there's so much that, okay, so for now, at least some work maybe has been sort of usurped by AI, but there's still a vast, array of things that still need a human touch, and this that still needs a human to practice or to, sort of understand it. So I feel like they should just change their perspective on what they feel like is design, what isn't.
Hmm, hmm. Just broadening the definition, because again, the definition of design and how it's practiced is also very rapidly changing in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
trends, and tools and everything. There's a new tool every day that does things better. Even outside of AI, there's just new, design tools
mm,
like Affinity. Canva came up with a
yeah,
whole suite,
yeah.
Counter, Adobe, and all of those things. So came up with that. Um, Serena, because you are part of like a creative team, and I'm sure you also work with designers. So how have you seen junior designers, let's say, with like just entering the field or like with less than 2 or 3 years of experience? What is their entire interaction like with AI, and what are some of the struggles they might be facing in terms of how to keep up with everything, and do you have anything to say to them around just how to manage this sort of unpredictability?
I think that interestingly, I have noticed a lot of people ask the question why in specific whenever somebody is encouraging them to use AI to do XYZ task. I've noticed a lot of the times, specifically young designers tend to ask like why do I need to use AI for this? Like what is it that it can do better than what I have the craft and the skill to do? Which is a very odd place to sort of be as a fresh designer, because these tools, they have increased in like what their capabilities so suddenly that people who are fresh out of university have learned a very different type of craft than like what is now available as a tool. And so there is like this question of, hey, why should I even be using this? I can do this so much faster when I'm doing this myself. I've noticed a bunch of people also bring up like conversations around climate change in specific, and like concerns about heavily relying on AI because of just how devastating it is to the climate, and just not wanting to do that for that specific reason. Interestingly, I have not come across that many designers who are very eager to use it. Like they're out there for sure, 100%. But like I have personally not come across that many in my own, not just within the team itself, but just also outside of the team. And that is not like a complete rejection, which is great, because I do think that you need to understand a tool in order to be able to know why you want to use it, where you want to use it, and make like good critical thinking choices around like how you want to use it. Um, and I think one of the things that I would actually really like to discuss over here is the grunt work that you were talking about. I agree with Manahil that like not all of it is entirely possible to do with AI. By the end of the day, everything that comes out, you'll end up needing to polish it anyway, which ends up falling onto a junior designer one way or another. But there are a specific type of tasks that you give to a junior designer just for them to kind of hone their skills, be able to sort of like pick out errors really quickly, and be able to work at a pace that the industry and specifically agency setups like really demand, because multiple clients, multiple deadlines, none of them are entirely related with each other. And there's just like work, work, work all the time. And so one of the things that I thinking about a lot right now is what is the type of work um, what is junior designer, like absolutely intern level, fresh out of the university designer work going to look like? What are the kind of tasks that we're going to end up giving them? And I'm very interested to hear like Usman and Manahil, like your guys' thoughts on that in specific.
I think the question
Either of you.
of junior designers. Yeah, I think the question of junior designer. One thing I say is कि अब तो बहाने कम हो गए हैं ना कि you cannot create assets. Illustrations नहीं बना सकता मैं खुद से या in very limited scale, of course. I cannot create these specific icons. मैं वही जो library है उसी से use करूँगा. ये नहीं बना. You can a lot more, and isn't it beautiful that all the tools or the access to the tools is so democratized. You have the same access as somebody working as any top firm in the world. So imagination or execution wala that's becoming short and short. So agar aap excuses come kare, and if you really want to make something, and these tools are great. Specifically, let's say if I in terms of mockups, let's say हम कहते हैं mockups बनाने के केस में नहीं मिल रहा, now you give the logo or the mockup you want, and it does pretty good job with it. थोड़ी सी finishing touching up कर लें, या UI के केस में again creating assets, customized illustration, icons, even to an extent अब तो आप एक tool से एक graphic बनाए दूसरे को वही देख animate. Now you can do so much more. So I think for the junior designers, it's more of an opportunity to really shine out beyond their number of years that they have worked, and limited access to that. Let somebody working at a smaller company, जहाँ let's say they don't have Shutterstock images या वो सारे tools नहीं है, in just $3 की किसी एक subscription में you can do so much of more, and you can excel in like आप अपनी portfolio website still like अभी भी we are hiring these days, and I'm looking at the people's portfolio. Like you can literally give one command to any of the tool out there, वो आपकी portfolio website बना देंगे. और अभी भी आपके पास अगर नहीं है वो, so that means there's something really that needs to be discussed at your internal end. More than so, I think there's a good chance for junior design shine on if they really want to, and for agencies also कि वो excuses और वो अब कम हो गए. So I think I like the fact that it's a level playing field for everyone to kind of create. And if you're not creating, I think you are the one responsible for it.
I think one thing I'd like to add to sort of wrap up this part of the conversation would be, so any designer coming to the field, don't think about how AI can replace your own skills. Like don't think about कि जब वो मैं अभी ये करता हूँ तो AI किस तरह से वो same काम कर सकता है. Think about how it can complement your thing. So like Usman said, having to like customize illustration that sort of make your thing more unique. Even if you don't know illustrations, you can make your own design, but then bring in these more unique icons that fit the style that you have, and not use it to create something from scratch that you can do. So sort of maintain your own craft, but also see, okay, if you want to use AI, what are something that can make sort of give that additional the cherry on top sort of to your design, and that how that can bring things in. So moving on from this, but also sort of linked to it, because we've been talking about human craft and like you specializing into things. As we move forward, there is this thing around bespoke design and more very specialized fields coming up, like climate designers and trauma-informed designers. Do you think the going forward, the era of like this generalist designer जो एक होता था that could manage 10 different things, that is going to fade away, and we need more and more specialized roles will come up? Or do you think there will be a place for more generalist designers going forward?
I think there's always going to be room for a generalist designer. That's just my opinion on it. And also in terms of just like bespoke design, or I think like very recently there was a Porsche ad that was entirely animated and like fully hand drawn, etc. I feel like there is a huge push specifically with these very high end type of brands. It does always happen when you have like multiple brands are able to sort of make a specific style of art by using AI. The difference between quality is sort of quality and high end, just like the luxury of it is kind of shown by standing outside of the crowd. And so you have these brands, like so many brands that are rushing towards like using AI and stuff like that within their sort of marketing and other design assets. You also will have like a push towards these very high-end brands using very artisanal quality things in order to show that they can afford this and in order to like indicate luxury in a way. And so that I feel that is in itself a specialization as well, because it requires like very artists that are very specialized in a certain craft, like for example hand illustration. Like, you know, these artists are specifically these designers are specifically entrenched in that craft. However, the other end of it is that like the generalist designer is always going to have some kind of value, because by the end of the day, even if you have like all of these automated tools and stuff like that, you are still going to need somebody who can oversee these things and like make sure that the quality of XYZ thing is correct. If you have too many specializations, not every in-house team or even like every agency can afford somebody who's like hyper, unless their work is specifically revolving around that specialization. So say, for example, like climate designers, there's a very specific subset of companies that would be working with somebody like that. And then on the opposite end, within an agency or something like that, you won't find that much want for something like that. I think it's great that we're having these kind of specializations, but at the same time, I don't think that it overshadows the importance for like a generalist designer.
I agree. And I feel Sarina has covered it very well. And I also feel that, you know, there can be a balance. Like, generalist designers can tap into niches now and just, you know, just based on their interest. And I am a very big believer of the T model, that you have certain skills, but then you also start building specialization on certain aspects of it. But at the same time, you may have different roles, and sometimes you will be a specialized designer, but maybe one project comes in where they really need a specific niche, and then, you know, you also step up for that. So I think one can also find a balance, and that's something I've been doing in my career too. So I've been interested in these, especially in Pakistan, very niche things like design for policy, systems thinking, and design for public sector, service design for public sector, that I wouldn't always get the roles for. But when I would, it would be something really up my alley and something that I would really enjoy, because I would, you know, be one of the very few people in Pakistan who would actually be able to do it. So I think I enjoy this, you know, moving between being a journalist as well as some specific niches that I'm personally very passionate about myself.
Okay, perfect. That actually does make a lot of sense, because I am also a sort of T-shaped designer, T-shaped T designer, whatever it's called. So I do like lots of different design things, but my sort of specialty is design research. So like, you know, more than just user research, what are all the different things. So that specialty can remain, but also the overall knowing. And I think just having that T-shaped mindset is also because you need to know कि अच्छा हो क्या रहा है design world में outside of your own specialty also to keep up with things, because as we move forward everything will be interlinked, everyone will be sort of, you know, one thing leads to the other and everything will impact what's happening in the other part of things. Yeah. So I think because when you talked about things you're passionate about, and climate was a big thing in your perspective that you shared, around, you know, we need to start thinking about moving away from conversations around climate to actually thinking how can thoughtful design actually help with, you know, climate change, and what are some of the solutions that can come up.
Yeah.
And do you think in Pakistan's context, people or students or like designers generally are starting to think about these things, and are they working on any projects, or are you aware of anything, any sort of initiative that have been taken that sort of gives us a glimpse into कि हाँ ये चीज़ actually होना शुरू हो रही है. Like people are actually thinking about design, using design, any form of design to work on climate change and work on any other social issues within Pakistan.
So I think there's a big interest from students, and all the thesis shows that I've seen recently in Karachi, there have been very brilliant student projects addressing this in one form or the other. Like there have been many projects about the inevitable reality of Karachi, that maybe urban flooding or sea levels rising would affect the landscape of Karachi, and Karachi would look very different, and there would be parts of Karachi that would be underwater, and that is something that many people can foresee happening, considering whatever we have seen in the past 5-10 years. So it's really interesting that some students, even with speculative design or design fictions, they're able to ask thought-provoking questions about how would people live if the city looked like that. And then there are some very realistic projects. Like I saw a student's project which was about sort of small urban forests that are in Karachi. So she picked one, and she collaborated with one, and what would be the design of the experience for younger children who come there, and how can they make pigments from certain plants grown in that urban forest, and again re-engaging children with nature. And it was a beautiful project, and that inspired me so much. So I think related to sustainability and about nature and about climate change, there are so many responses in many different ways. And I think it's really interesting to see all the ways in which it's sort of weaving together. Like recently, I was at a tech conference. There was a whole panel on ventures related to climate change, and how there is
Yeah.
specific funding available in Pakistan for ventures which would be specifically addressing climate change. And for me, that was a brilliant thing to and they sort of really dive deep into the policies which are working, policies which are not working, and there's so many avenues where people need to bring new ventures. And that's something that I am now trying to encourage my students to do, that whatever projects you do in class, they should become real ventures, especially if they're related to climate change, because there's a need for it, but there's also like support slowly becoming available for it.
Lovely. And Usman and Sarina,
So yeah, I
because you
agree.
work
I've
with.
been noticing this.
Sorry, I was going to come to you, so continue.
Sorry, I just kind of was riffing off of like Manahil's point. Essentially, yeah, I agree. I've been noticing this sort of like shift towards climate designers in specific all over the world. Essentially, there is a lot of funding that is available in several other countries as well, and it's really encouraging to know that this is something that is being done in Pakistan in specifically, because I feel like specifically millennial designers, like the landscape that existed at least when I was sort of stepping into design, which was about 12 years ago, there was almost like a choice that people had to make. Either you go into something that is extremely corporate, or you make like a good amount of money, or you become broke. Like there was very little options in general in terms of just like obviously the other option was not entirely nil, but it was so minimal that there was almost like it's a huge sort of, it's almost like a privilege to kind of go into those directions, and it was not something that was accessible to like all kinds of people, because people have responsibilities in life and stuff like that. So it's really great to know that there's like active investment in like sustainability and social causes that is happening within Pakistan as well. And I think that like that specific choice, the gap between those choices, like do you want to be very corporate, or do you want to like work with very specific social issues, is diminishing slowly, and there is a market for social causes related design, and it's super encouraging to see young designers sort of make those choices just because of the landscape that they are stepping into, and just taking that agency within themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. I think Usman's example is like a great example right now. He's using design for like accessibility and all of these things. So there is a push for the more social conscious design and all of that. And I think it's also about us as practitioners. Even if we get projects where, let's say, these things are not the primary objective, but we also try to include these because we know this is important and we know we as
Yeah.
practitioners should be thinking about these things. So अगर accessibility पे उनका focus नहीं है या
Exactly.
just ethical design पे focus नहीं है, so we should just be the advocates for that ourselves and try to bring it more and more into this, because I think
Absolutely. A designer's job is also to educate the client. And of course, maybe 8 out of 10 times they would say no, but it's okay, you tried. And maybe that 2 out of 10 times when they agreed and they got inspired because of your push, that makes the greatest impact in the world. And we all need designers to do that 10 pushes. And if everybody gets those 2 out of 10 wins, the world would be such
Exactly.
a much better place in general.
exactly or
Absolutely, I
just
agree with that.
sorry, I think there's a lag, so we're sort of overlapping, but go
I
ahead.
think,
I'm sorry for the
yeah, yeah. I agree completely that there needs to be a push with designers as well. There was a number of like events that I was previously involved in where I noticed there was a lot of like almost like pessimism within designers where they were like, oh, the client never actually agrees with stuff like this. And so like, why should I consistently push for it? But it's the resilience that really counts over there. It is like designers asking themselves, like, what do I stand for essentially? Like, what do I care about and how do I bring that into my work? Because by the end of the day, we are designing for people. And I think that core of it has gotten lost over the years. And I think like right now is like a good time to sort of reclaim that and be like, yes, these are the causes that I care about. And this is how I'm going to integrate that into a project that might not even be about that, like Faizan, you mentioned.
Yeah, certainly. Usman, do you have any thoughts? And then Yusra, after this, we can maybe take some comments from the audience. But Usman, if you have any thoughts
No, I think
to close
I
this
definitely, of
discussion.
course, agree कि as designers, ऐसे designers are the one who choose who will be on the table, who will not be on the table when we design a certain journey or a pattern, intentionally or unintentionally. In most cases, intentionally, we are excluding people without. So it's important to think who we are excluding and who is not on the table, then who is on the table. So there's a great role or response for design to think on when we are building products, designing products. And it's good, as Manahil said, it is important to teach the clients as well, but maybe in very humble way, or like in our case, share different knowledge base with the client. Okay, these are the findings, not to look too smart or too overconfident, but to and in fact, it also helps for client. It helps the client to trust on you more with their product. Like product is a baby for a client. When they know कि they अच्छा इनको पता है कि ये business model क्या है, journey उसकी क्या है, तो they trust more, they listen to you more, they ask for your feedback. You have to get better authority as well, and you have to use it for the right purposes of. And again, as a designer, the role is to include people, while instead of thinking these 4 people are on the table, maybe ask next time who is not on the table but should be here today. So that lies, we underestimate job as a designer, because जब भी प्रोडक्ट बनता है तो वो पहले डिजाइनर्स के हाथ चढ़ता है, उसके बाद आप उसकी साथ जो करें तो it kind of set the tone for the product for the future as well. And
Yeah.
sometimes there, of course, there are cheat codes, you can easy around it, कि अच्छा ये किया तो मुझे साथ ही एक नया पूरी जर्नी बनानी पड़ेगी और उसको मैं जल्दी से इसको रैप कर लूँ और वो सारा, बट क्या फायदा? I think,
Exactly.
and of course, it's सबका, I think वो sweet spot भी हो सकता. I've been also looking at the comments भी मेरा
Yeah.
वो पीछे mockups वाले पे I think just to add to that ज़रूरी नहीं आप extremes पे use करें या AI use ना करें. I'm not asking you to go my way or highway. There has to be sweet spot with ethics, of course. Junior designer की हम बात कर रहे थे तो I'm also in, like I say, for junior designer they shouldn't be on Fiverr or on these things, because then you focus more on the quantity than the quality, and you suffer developing your taste because you are up for the speed, and then you just wrap things up and you build wrappers than the taste of your own. Anything and everything that we said, that doesn't mean कि आप किसी चीज से cheat around करें. That more कि आप use things for the good of humanity, use things for you to become more efficient. From one extreme to another extreme, using AI to not using AI, maybe there's a balance between the both. Sometimes you may be at the one end or the other end, but using it responsibly or doesn't mean कि आप cheat around करें किसी उसके चीज के साथ, and that comes to you as a person, as a man, that responsibility is yours, how you use it. There again किसी भी चीज का गलत इस्तेमाल रोका नहीं जा सकता. Weapons are made for safety, and the same thing can be used to destroy people. So it comes to the person using it. अगर आप satisfied हैं कि, और and it's really important also for designers or anyone with the AI to have the flavor of it. I saw some comments saying कि AI के साथ आप you become part of the collector. That's because you're not putting enough effort on the prompts and these things. You can also make different things with the AI. That doesn't, आप अगर उससे कहेंगे design a website तो वो एक ही तरह की बनाए. If you ask it to make more modern, minimal, use serif font, ये वाला font use करें, ये वाली styling use करें, if you become more, it will also learn to adopt your personality and your taste. And it's important for, as a designer, have a taste or a flavor of your own, for something to be recognized as, and a personality of your work. That's also important. So I saw but there's been some good comments. I think we are moving to the comments, but again, we don't have to be at one extreme or the other extreme. There's a sweet balance of things, and which can be, I think, helpful more. Again, छोड़ दें या use कर लें उससे.
I think your point was a little bit around like not making excuses as a junior designers, rather than like the exact tool that you're going to use. Because I do believe like within mockups as well, like there is a certain level of like workarounds that you can do with mockups as well. Some people just build their own. It is a task, but you can still go the non-AI route to actually build your own mockups and like edit your mockups to make them very personalized to the clients. And I think that
it's
again,
more to
your
remove
point, it's
the
just
blockers.
Exactly. And by the end of the day, you do need design thinking for that, which is essentially problem solving. Like how, if you don't want to do it with AI, absolutely don't do it with AI. Like stick to your values, whatever those are, and just like decide like how, if you don't want to do this with AI, don't do this. Like just find a workaround is what I'm saying. Is I think also what you were saying, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you for being the savior.
So I think we can go on and on discussing these things and just going on and on tangents also, because there's so much to discuss, and I think we're having a great conversation. But keeping in view the time, and also we have some comments rolling in, so let's take a look at what people are saying and if you have any thoughts on that. Okay, so Ahmed Murtada says, for the new designers here, can you elaborate on grunt work? I think grunt work is also, it's very subjective to your, what might be grunt work for me might not be grunt work for anyone else, right? It's also because a lot of times the boring work also just is categorized as grunt work, but that boring work for me might not be boring for someone else, and they might enjoy doing those little things, those repetitive things. But yeah, open to anyone else's comments, and how do you define grunt work?
So I think we've already discussed this in a lot of detail earlier. I think we were talking about it in the context that some of the so-called grunt work, but as you said, I agree with you that somebody can enjoy it, but also it teaches you. And that practice also that my fellow panelists were saying, that craft that practice and that attention to detail brings something to your craft and to your skills and to your thought process, and even to you as a human being. I think because whenever you do something creative and you hone a skill, I think it just changes you as a human. Like you become a different human through that process. So I think the grunt work is just something that may be repetitive if I have to define it. But as you said, I agree with you that it can be so subjective.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my first art directors actually said this to me at one point because they were training me to be a senior designer at the point, and I was very hard on our interns. Um, and one of the things my art director sort of said to me at that point was just, you might think that there is like, a lot of value in like a lot of critical thinking and all of those like big picture projects, but every designer has a place. Like even the designer who just enjoys doing a repetitive task, like essentially just like aspect ratio, fixing of like different sizes of ads, they have a space within the team as well. Like they are also adding something to the team, which you might not want to do, but they want to do it. Like they enjoy doing that. But like as a definition of grunt work, I think I would take that, like adding the logo to like 80 sizes of ads, or fixing all of the layouting issues in like several different types of ads and stuff like that, which is now extremely doable by AI. But like essentially that would be what I would consider grunt work. Things that are extremely repetitive, do not require the brain to be super engaged within the task. But again,
Yep.
that's also adding value.
Cool. And I think we have some comments and questions coming up around ethics. Like there is a whole conversation around ethics
Yeah,
in
I think
design and AI and just generally. Yeah.
there's a lot that need to be discussed on the ethics, and especially again, one of the things recently we are working here in Riyadh is on impact of digitalization on social behaviors. मतलब मजा तो आ रहा है सब चीजें डिजिटलाइज करें, but we as a human, how we interact with people, how we may interact in our relationships different, तो वो बहुत important है, and I think we are not taking those things in account. So I think there's a lot that can be said around the ethics of AI or using design or वो सारा. But if anyone else can want to add, तो
I think that
I'm enjoying
like
the
in
comments,
terms
by
of
the way. Sorry.
absolutely, I think in terms of same. I think ethics, like there's a huge discussion to be had because AI is not the only future of like design in general. So there's a much broader conversation to be had about like ethics in specific. But I think that like over here in the comments itself, the conversation around ethics had specifically to do with AI. And I think that like again, it's a matter of like personal choice. Where do you specifically draw the line? Like, what are you comfortable using AI for? I think that like we mentioned like a few really good examples of like how AI is being used in order to better the world in some way. I think there was like a programmer in India who came up with like a sign language being translated while on Zoom calls, which was completely done through AI models. If I might be butchering like the exact um, uh, technicality of what she was doing, but I thought that was a very interesting use of AI as well. And maybe that could not have been something that could have existed without AI. But I do think that there is like ethical use that can take place. But again, it is up to you where you draw the line. Like personally, I would not go for generative AI for my research or my thinking. Like that's something that I'm personally uncomfortable with doing. And I don't think that that aligns with like how I do my work. And so I wouldn't do that. But then again, it's entirely up to you where you draw that line. And I think that like that is an entirely personal conversation that designers need to have with themselves. And instead of like just not choosing or feeling like they have to be a part of this AI movement just to stay relevant within the industry, because that will kill your spirit. Absolutely.
I would just like to recommend a book. It's called Ruined by Design by Mike Montero. It's one of my most favorite books. And in the book is very simply written, like he even uses swear words. So it's just like somebody's talking to you. So it's very, the language is very simple. And he talks about the ethics of design in detail. And this was written, I think, pre COVID and pre AI. But even then, you can find so many similarities, even today, of the ethical dilemmas designers are in. And he also sort of guides you slowly on what you can do as a designer in the system. Even if you don't agree with the system, you can, tweak the system from within. So I would really, because I saw from the comments that some people are really interested in design ethics, that's a must read for everybody. And it's a super simple, easy read. So yeah, I recommend that.
Yeah, perfect. And then I think so. One practical example I could give in terms of how I balance the use of, because I do use generative AI, but I have my own sort of rationalizations of I'm not infringing on someone's rights and like copyright and all those things. Is that I never reference make this thing in the style of XYZ artist, or like I don't give image based prompts कि अच्छा मुझे इस तरह से बना दो. I figure out my own style कि this is what I want, and I can use AI to sort of come up with that prompt. So if anyone has seen my work, it's very sort of, it uses a lot of pastel colors and very Pakistan based settings, and they look like they're not real thing, because I don't want them to look real. I want them to look like this is something that's sort of surreal in this sort of imaginary world where we're going. So that's my own boundaries. Don't reference other people's work, create your own styles. And then also don't try to, because with generative AI you can give like 100 prompts, or it just starts working on them, right? So know where to stop, because if you just get into it, you just keep creating on and on and on, and that's the whole then the data centers are working, and then the climate conversation and everything. Not that it makes it any better. I'm very conscious of the fact that there is that climate impact thing in it. So I'm not sort of trying to minimize that, but it's just my rationalization is that I put my own guardrails. So figure out what those guardrails are for you, what your ethical boundaries are, and then try to work within them. Because if you talk, even the four of us here, we are into ethical design, but I'm pretty sure we'll have like different definition of what that looks like. So I think it's on you yourself to see what are the things that you don't want to cross, and where do you want to set those boundaries. In the age of visual overwhelm and social media fatigue, how can we ensure that design remain impactful and brain rot free, so everything doesn't look like a melting pot of one basic design? Interesting. Who wants to take this?
I think that how designers can ensure in specific I think it has a little bit more to do with just like having having a lot of design thinking, like very specific towards audiences, very specific towards who is going to be using this specific website, who is going to be using a specific product, etc., and who's going to be looking at this work. I think the impact of good design really comes from being in tune with who it's for and what it is trying to convey. Actually having something to say, and actually having actually having something that you want to put out there into the world. It is the reason why we have like a lot of brain rot and a lot of repetition in design is because of like the speed in which designers are expected to work, but also because of algorithms, right? So you were talking about social media fatigue. Essentially, designers are also trying to stay, designers, illustrators, artists, like they're also trying to stay on your newsfeed, and the algorithm makes it harder and harder and harder for them to do that. And so they start putting out things that are essentially just trend hopping and not really engaging with their own personal values, or not really saying anything, but just like, okay, here's a new show, I'm going to make fan art of this show. or like, here's a new like design trend, I'm going to talk about this, and everybody starts talking in the same way because the algorithm kind of pushes the same kind of conversational format. I think LinkedIn is an excellent example of this. 5 things that I learned from XYZ, like that's the format of like everything that goes up on LinkedIn, to the point where it becomes super empty, and like you don't feel like you're engaging with a human being, you feel like you're engaging with a robot. And I think that the thing that designers can essentially do to reduce that is to make sure that like what you are creating, what you're adding to the conversation actually needs to be said. Like, think about why this exists in the first place.
Perfect. I think we're also running out of time, and that's a good sort of closing note to everything. But one last question to you guys all before we end this. In sort of just a few words or like one line, what's the biggest mistake a designer could make in their mindset or their execution in 2026?
Can you repeat?
What's the biggest mistake a designer can make this year, whether that's in their thinking or in their execution?
By not creating enough, it's chance for designers to become founders. And there's a lot of work. Even Y Combinator, I was been looking, they rolled out a special program for designer to become founders. So that thought process to build the product, now they can become founders as well. The democratization of tech, you can connect Figma with some AI coding platform. So for me, I'm saying to designer to now start creating your own. So even smallest thing, जो consumer की जिंदगी में, and I think there's a great gap in terms of B2C AI products. There are a lot of products in B2B category. So if designers with their observation skill, because I think they observe for living, in 2026, if you don't do something designing, maybe I think that would be a mistake. Of course, there could be a lot more not learning or utilizing AI for the good. It's for designer now. It has become very easier, I would say, or comparatively, they have this competitive edge over the other people to start being as impact. And also, usually designers की case studies होती हैं, वो जो passion projects हैं, which they we can want to do it, but वो budget वाला issue है या client नहीं. Now you can actually make them live. There are platforms that helps you in distribution, put it on product hunt, put it on maybe again one of my products, Vibe Street, put it there. But distribution maybe help ho jati, and it's important for designers to sell as well, to learn how to sell, to learn how to do business, to understand other aspects of designing or building a product than just designing the interfaces while element. And even if you don't plan to do it for the longer run, do it for the shorter run. Learn how distribution works, how initial 10 customers, when you're doing it for your own self, you have the room to actually learn grow as a designer. So that's one thing I think that's something I would suggest for designers in 2020. And if you do it, so since my suggestion to give me 5% equity, I would mind it.
Definitely. We'll make sure.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minail, Serena, do you have anything on that?
Yeah. So for me, the biggest mistake would be if a designer lives in their own bubble and doesn't expand that bubble. So, you as a designer, you need to be also aware of current affairs, politics, and because that is affecting, in many cases, if there's no internet access, your product is not going to be used by the people because there is no internet access. Or if suddenly smartphones get extremely expensive, then of course people are not going to use your free app just because smartphones are expensive. So check your privilege. It's 2026. Just because life is great for you doesn't mean that it's like a happy-go-lucky world. I wish it was, but it isn't. So really, yeah, I think designers need to check their privilege. grow beyond their bubbles and really observe what's happening around them. And of course, because we are not just designers, we're also, humans, and we don't need to lose the humanness just to be a creative, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
On my end, I think what I would say is the one thing that would be really great for a designer to do, and I think that is something that I think designers should start doing in 2026, is to stop thinking that you don't have a choice. Stop thinking that you don't have a choice in like not using AI. Stop thinking that you don't have a choice in like not working for the kind of companies that you want to work for. Stop thinking that you don't have a choice in like having values or not having values. Like I think that is something that is expanding and growing very, very rapidly, but also just as creatives, I feel like we have lost that specific connection to the to culture in general. We set the culture, like we are within the society, we are part of it, and we do have a say in it. So essentially, just stepping out of the conversation and being like, hey, I don't have a choice because XYZ is asking me to do it, is I think at this point it, absolutely a privileged take. I can completely understand where that would be coming from, a place of privilege, but I do think that there are ways in which you can sort of like work around your privilege as well, and not just give up, like just let go off of that pessimism and realize that there is like a choice that we
I
can
agree.
personally make. Like there's much more agency than we believe there is.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a great thing to end this entire panel
Yeah.
on. Thank you, Usman, Manahil, Serena, for joining. It was great for me to also just hear everyone thinking, and even though we had sort of diverse views, there was also lots of similar patterns as we were
Yeah,
talking about.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And no, thank you for having us. And I'm so inspired
Thank you so
by
much for
everything
having us.
Serena and Usman said. And I learned a
Likewise.
lot. So it's always good to be part of such conversations where, I grow and I learn as well.
Perfect. And people in the audience, there's a QR
Absolutely.
code on,
Thank you for
on
having us,
my
guys.
sort of camera thingy. You can scan that and get access to the report, or you can just visit tnd2c.com and use it. So this report is not like a definitive answer what 2026 will look like. I think this discussion is also was just like expressing our viewpoints or where we wish it goes or where we think it's going. So use that this publication and this discussion as prompts in your own events and communities and in your workplace, and see what perspectives come up. And we'd love to just hear what conversation you're having. And also, we have some community partners, so Friends of Figma in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi. We've sort of collaborated with them, and we'll be hosting more events in the coming weeks. And we'd be super grateful if you can join, and also thankful to these partners that they partner with us with these events. And if someone in the audience wants to host an event that's centered around, future of design or this publication itself, feel free to reach out. If you want to host something or just any sort of collaboration if you want to have with ND2C, we're more than happy to do that. So thanks again to the guests in the audience for joining. Have a lovely rest of the night. Thank you. Bye.